Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to AFC Leyton's first ever Real Talk, the female football discussion that gives you the lowdown on the lockdown. Today we have AFC Leyton's head coach and Charlton Regional Talent Centre team manager Tom. Give us a wave, Tom. Our under-15s team manager, and when he's not with us, he's at Four Corner coaching, Jake. Our new under-8s and under-9s team manager and ex-Leyton player herself, Stephanie. And our under-14s and newly formed women's team manager, Estelle. And of course, myself here, I'm the club secretary. So today we're going to discuss the topic levelling the playing field. Despite the progress made in the women's game in the last 10 years, has this been enough? Or did the FA of old do too much damage banning female football for a shocking 50 years at a time when it was more popular than the men's game? So is this something that we can actually recover from with the lack of pitch availability at grassroots level, far less investment than the men's game, and now the Women's FA Cup being decided with an actual coin toss? We ask the question, will there ever be real equality in the women's game? Tom, how about your thoughts?
Firstly, I'm going to open it up. What is everybody's understanding of equality, first and foremost? Jake?
I actually researched it earlier. So the definition is the state of being equal specifically in terms of status, rights and or opportunities. So for me, that is everyone involved within a certain environment given the same opportunity to thrive and, you know, better themselves?
Yeah.
So I think your key word for me being environment. With the women's game at the minute, is the environment the same as the men's game?
How do you mean?
How many women's teams are professional compared to how many professional men's teams do they have?
Oh yeah, so I would assume that there is more men's football teams than there are women's teams. That's what I'd guess. I don't know the figures.
I'm playing devil's advocate here, but if we're talking about equality within the women's game, is the women's game the same as the men's?
Well,
Jake, yeah, anyone?
No, it's not. Far from it.
I agree with that one.
Yeah, I think all aspects. I don't think there's an aspect within football that you can say women are equal to men. I'm yet to find one, if there is one.
They both play 90 minutes.
That's great, Jake. Thanks.
Yeah, but you know, I was watching Reading versus Chelsea the other day, and something that stuck out to me was, sounds really silly, but the size of the football, size 5. Now, if you compare the average size foot of a woman compared to a man, I've not got the stats behind me, but do women have the same or average size foot as a man? If not, you know, why do younger children play with size 2, 3, 4 and then work their way up to a 5? As I say, going back to Jake and your environment, we're talking about equality. Could we have a secondary part to that question? Should the women's game be altered and become the women's game within its own right, rather than be a women play football, which is a men's sport? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I kind of like, it's actually quite a good word, like equity, which is obviously equity is kind of about giving a person like a kind of thing to make, how to explain it. It's kind of everyone has different kind of circumstances, different things about them. So like you said about the women, obviously like the size of their feet and kind of their height, and it's kind of giving them the resources so that they can be equal to men's, rather than kind of giving them the exact same environment, the exact same thing for them to be equal, but then you kind of give them the resources so that it can be. So kind of like I said, changing the ball size maybe, or to kind of fit them so that they can be equal to the men.
I remember when I think it was Emma Hayes, she said something about making the goals smaller, making the size of the goals smaller. I remember reading it and going through the comments, and everyone was just slating women's football. Like, it made everything 10 times worse. It like did the opposite of then people were saying, well, how can women want equality within football, but then you want to change stuff to your own advantage? And then it kind of made the statement about women not being able to compete at the same level as men. It kind of made it true. It kind of backfired a bit.
Yeah.
Lou, do you want to jump on before? I was going to touch on still what she just said. Come on, Lou.
No, for me, I was going to take it into a different way and say the environment actually, outside of what you've suggested is not equal for me because of that accessibility to being able to play. When you've got hundreds of women's and girls teams trying to get pitch time, and they can't get on there because the men's game has been allowed without any hindrance to grow exponentially in the UK for a whole 50 years while the female football was banned. They've had that environment given to them over decades, and now we're playing catch up, but we haven't got the facilities, we haven't got the pitch time. I'm not necessarily convinced that, women do need a different environment as such. I don't think we need smaller goals. I don't think we need different equipment. I do think coaching needs to be slightly different, because there is biology at play here. Physically, women are different to men. But in terms of the actual environment, I just think that equality and access isn't there. And I don't know if there's any impetus or any push or money to make sure that the infrastructure is there to cope with, the same amount of men and boys teams, but for females. Can we do that? Is the infrastructure in place? That's my issue.
I've got an example of that this season. I was trying to arrange a game, and the team that we were playing said, "Oh, we can't have a morning kickoff because all the boys' teams play in the morning." So we had to have a late kickoff just because their club put the boys' football in front of the girls' football. He said it was probably just because they've been going longer than the girls' teams, and that just goes back to your point of playing catch up and having to play, in a way, second fiddle to the boys' teams because they've got first pick.
Yeah, but we can catch up, but we can only catch up if there is that space to do so.
A question: Jude obviously runs their own business separately and away from Leyton. How would you feel if a media company that has just started up or has got, small experience, how would you feel if they want the same slice of the cake as you've got?
That actually does happen. Yeah. So
what happens then?
It's just competitive, it's comparing apples and oranges, it's a competitive environment. So, sometimes, we might.
Okay, you say it's a competitive environment, but that's like me starting off a media company and going, do you know what, I want a bit of what you've got. How can I get that? Is that competitive, or is that creating a false society that actually you can get what you want without actually working hard? Now, the football.
Well, your assumption is that everything's starting off equal. What if I've said to you that you are not allowed to run a video production company, which is what I own, for 50 years? You're banned from running for 50 years, and now you've just been allowed to open one after 50-year ban.
That 50-year ban, I haven't got the information or the knowledge about it. So if you tell me a bit more, how and why did that happen? Was there a reason for that?
The FA's ban?
Yeah.
They just didn't think women should be playing it. They thought it was bad for women's hips. They tried it was growing. It was too popular, and they found a number of reasons why women should not play football. They were nonsense of reasons.
When did women stop playing football?
The FA banned women from playing football in 1921, and they didn't lift the ban until 1971. So it was a 50-year ban, which was 100 years ago to this year. So we're kind of, it's just the anniversary of when it was stopped. By then, of course, and it was more popular than the men's game. So we were seeing, grassroots crowds of 50,000 spectators in 1920 watching women play. So it was a popular sport. It was, a big thing back at the turn of the century. And the FA didn't like that. They put a stop to it. This is obviously the FA of old, not the current FA. And it's done an awful lot of damage, because that could have been the most dominant sport for women and girls. it could have been, and it could have been the men either playing catch up, or it could have been equal, or we're not really sure, what the shape of it would have been. But it feels to me that now, yes, okay, we still had 50 years that the ban has been lifted, but it feels to me like the damage was really done then. Girls were so pushed out of it. Even when it was opened up to girls to play, there was no emphasis on schools to do it. So girls were playing hockey while the boys were doing football. And it's only been in the last decade, really, that we've had any sort of emphasis on increasing the female game. So is that now a fair environment for us to just go, hey guys, right, we're now, there's an emphasis on us playing. All of us clubs are here trying to get as many women's and girls playing as possible, but we have nowhere to put them because we're waiting for the pitch time, waiting for other clubs to come off, and it's completely dominated by males.
I did some digging, and in terms of participation, and officially now in England, football is the biggest female team sport. Whereas I don't know what it was before, but it's only just become the officially the biggest female team sport within England.
Yeah.
But when I look at the numbers, it's 147,000 players competed last season in an affiliated league. But then I look at the amount of girls that are apparently playing kickabout football. It's 1.1 million. It's like a tenth of what the actual whole number is in terms of how many people are interested in football, but only 147,000 people actually signed up for a team.
I do think that's like coming on to like Lou's point about kind of that offering that environment for them. Like obviously think about it, the amount of clubs that can actually offer kind of affiliated leagues properly or an academy compared to kind of the male kind of league. Do you know what I mean? Like there's more to offer, there's more to scout for them, whereas here there's only kind of that number of actually trying to get there kind of thing.
I'm pretty sure the FA made it a requirement to be a chartered standard football team to have a girls and female section. So I know that, I'm pretty sure that was a thing. So I just look at the amount of men's, let's say youth males teams. Do those have the capacity to start up a female team? Do they have the coaches? Do they have the referees? Do they have the people doing the admin behind the scenes? It's not just players, in my opinion. It takes more than just two teams to have a football match. So it's the opportunity there. Is the facility there? I don't know.
Well, I mean, that for me comes down to the drive to want to do it. I mean, you find your coaches, you find your referees, you find your players, you find all of those things if you have that drive and will to do that. It does seem that clubs that don't have that is because there's not a will and desire to do so. It's not that the players aren't there. We know the players are there. They are right there.
1.1 million of them play.
Absolutely.
Play the game, but only a tenth of that. Only 10% of that is actually playing grassroots or elite football.
So from Jake's figures, if you like, part of 1.1, they're obviously playing recreationally, if I've said it right. Is that due to infrastructure, facilities, opportunity? Society has got a lot to answer for.
Yeah, social norms.
In terms of the 50-year ban, obviously I don't think there's anyone here old enough to maybe live through that. So we don't know why. We can only assume and come up with our own ideas. However, is there an argument to say that if those 147,000 players that are playing, if they were boys, would it be so difficult to find a ref, to find a pitch, to have, to get people together? So my counter to that would be, I know back in my day there was probably on one hand so many girls that I came across within football that I played. Jake, you might be similar, Estelle, whether you play within a boys team, I'm not too sure, but elite level of football, does it have to just be men's, or could we not just have elite level of football and it's open to male and female? Now I know there'll be the scientists that go, oh no, that can't be possible, but there will be players out there. So for me, if a girl is good enough. They could play within the boys' team. Why has it got to stop at a certain age? Why could it not continue? See what I'm saying?
Mm. Mm. But does that level the playing field, or does that just elevate a few elite players?
Doesn't that just mean the amount of players that can play is limited?
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Because if you're saying everyone's got to play for, I don't know, the same team, instead of having 2 teams, that's now just 1 team. Instead of having 22 players, it's now 11 players. And the way that, you know, people perceive football in the world, are they going to choose a professional female footballer over a professional male footballer? If you were to look at, I don't know, Harry Kane, who's the England captain, and Steph Houghton, who's the England women's captain, you know, who in society, who would you choose? You know,
I think it starts deeper and before that. As I say, society, you know, you ask a young female what do they want to be when they're older, again, without having the market research behind me, you know, what would their answer be?
I don't think it would be football.
Sorry?
I don't think it would be the majority of people. I don't think would be to be a professional footballer. Whereas when I'm in schools, you ask some of the boys, I want to be a professional footballer. It's like the most common answer.
Steph, why did you play football as a kid?
Oh, I don't know. I think it was kind of, like I don't really have a kind of specific reason. It was just something that I enjoyed. Like my family, obviously, like my closest family members, they obviously loved football a lot. And it was kind of like that. But it was coming back to your point about like I started playing football with boys. Do you know what I mean? Like because there wasn't that kind of thing where I could go to just a girls' team and play. And I think it kind of does, like there was a part of you that kind of, I think if you're mixing them, it is more, you are like Jack said, you're constantly being compared to kind of that male figure. Do you know what I mean? Like it's never, oh, like I'm playing as a team. It's kind of like you're the girl of the team. And do you know what I mean? Like, so there are some factors that could put you off as well. Do you know what I mean? Like there was kind of thing.
You know what? But, saying that female going to a male dominated kind of environment, that's brave at such a young age as well. You know, I'm trying to think if I wanted to do something as a child that, you know, meant I was going into a female environment, I'm not too sure I would. And again, that goes back to society, and it's interesting what Steph said about, you know, your family kind of was football, so you're a makeup and a product of the environment that you're brought up in.
Well, yeah, because I do think that's a massive contribution to why, like Jake said, there's 1.1 million kind of girls kicking it about recreationally, but actually playing, obviously, there's only 10% of them. A lot of it comes down to your family environment as well. Like there are many people that, even with me, you're playing with boys and they go, well, she's a girl, like she's obviously not going to be as good as us. And you've also got family members that might be like, why do you want to play football? Like that's a men's sport, that's a boys' sport. Because I mean, there's always that constant kind of comparison of that thing. And then when you do step into kind of that with all like men, like boys and whatever, it's a big thing, because it's like it feels like you shouldn't be there kind of thing.
I remember one of my boys' teams. I remember we played against a girls' team, and all the boys were asking me, "Is it okay to tackle them? Is it okay to, you know, do the same as we would in a normal game?" And I said, "Yeah, of course it is." And what we found was the girls actually were more physical than we were, because the boys were very standoffish to start. It took an elbow, it took a kick, it took a tackle from one of the girls to actually change their mindset of how, you know, they perceive girls playing football. And now if I was to ask them, they would say the same things they'd say about any team now. Whereas it took that one kind of experience to change a mindset. And I think even growing up for me, I don't recall one girls team that I ever came across or knew of a girls team in the local area. And this was only 10, 15 years ago. And I was, you know, coming up through the grassroots system as well. Now I look at my local teams, every single one of them have it. The amount of coaches that they have doing it is doubled, tripled. And like even specifically girls only teams like us have popped up as well. Whereas that was never a thing. There was never there was a need for it, but there was never kind of this drive, as someone said earlier, to actually make it happen.
So by that idea, do you feel that grassroots are more supportive of the female game than at the top? Because when we've got things like that I said earlier about the Women's FA Cup being decided with the coin toss, yet you've got all of this efforts going on at a local level. Is therefore the drive and the issue is the top rather than the bottom? And so the bottom, we've got all these clubs trying to do stuff. We're looking for facilities. The impetus is there, but at the top, the attitude still hasn't changed. Do you feel that that's probably where the issue lies?
I think the higher up you go, the more it comes in. The money comes into it, and viewership and advertising and ticket money and audience.
It's so much more than just playing football, isn't it?
At that stage, I just looked at some figures earlier, like just at the World Cup, for example, in 2018, the France, when they won, got 314 million for winning. When America won, when they, in the Women's World Cup, they got 23 million. I mean, 300 million, 23 million is, and if you look at the figures, actually, like in terms of how many people watched it in total, 3 billion people watched the men and 1 billion people watched the women. So there's only a third difference, and the amount of money difference is way more than a third.
So the advertising revenue on 1 billion viewers would have been enormous. Yeah, the money that got passed through was actually quite low. So
the only thing is, a lot of the Women's World Cup was shown free to air, whereas a lot of the men's wasn't free to air. So there's a little bit of difference there, but it's only it's like 1/3 of the total, yet the prize money is 10% of it, if that.
Do you think that would ever change?
I think it has potential to. I don't know how long it would take, but it definitely has potential. I know that in 2015 World Cup, I didn't watch for the girls for the Women's World Cup, but I sat and watched 80% of the Women's World Cup in 2019. I mean, that's only a 4-year difference.
Because you're involved in women's football.
Probably. And my change of environment is probably said, right, you know what? I'm actually invested in that now. I know the England players, and they're in the semi-final. I'm going to watch. I even watched the final when England weren't even in it. I mean, I probably watched the Women's World Cup final more than I watched France versus Croatia, because Croatia knocked England out, and I weren't interested. But yeah, I think it has potential. I just think it needs to be. People need to be put in a situation where they're exposed to it, and then they will make their mind up. I
feel like that's the most difficult thing to do, though. Like, obviously, there is potential for it to kind of grow, and kind of them to for it to grow. But it's like you had to put yourself in that situation of being surrounded by a girls only club and actually physically seeing, oh, actually, it's like that environment, and then you go, oh, actually, I'm kind of interested in it. Then I'm going to go watch and support. Because not everyone has that kind of access to visually see that and kind of see what goes on behind the scenes for kind of women's football. It's difficult.
You mentioned earlier about obviously being in an environment where your family enjoyed football and watched it all the time and they were supportive, but just seeing a lot of coaches and talking to them, and they're just so dismissive of it. And I look at how old they are, and they're in their late 40s, in their 50s. Now look at what, they was around during the 50-year ban a lot of the time. So they haven't had any football, women's football in their kind of life.
I feel like it has like that kind of, well, that's when I feel like that growth of how obviously now it's a bit more kind of accepted. Like, I feel like trying to find women coaches kind of moving on will probably be a lot easier because of how many there are participating. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like now, say for example, like you've got the under 15s and 16s, is like they could move on and go, well, actually I want to go on and coach. It was quite rare to, because like when I first started coaching, there was no girls side, and then it took one team, and then we literally, I'm not joking, there was 2 girl coaches, and then by the end of the 4 years there was a whole girl section, and every team was coached by a female. I mean, like, it's that kind of growing. So the more popular it gets and the more people interested in it, then that's kind of that more growth, and there's going to be more women around to kind of support that and have that environment.
So is that attitude, are they a dying breed, do you think? We're sort of going to automatically age out of, those negative attitudes, and the women's game will automatically progress, and it's just going to keep it's going to take time, but slowly get the momentum. Is that the general feeling?
Yeah.
It will progress, but I think the expression I use is the higher up the football ladder you go within the women's game, you're going to start to bottleneck, and it's going to get tighter and tougher. And what I mean by that is, so look at the WSL and all the female leagues out there. Notoriously, football is known for Saturday afternoon 3 o'clock kickoff. Now, if you've got so many people tuning in to a male game, my question is, how do you get those same amount of people tuning into a female game? So that means whether you can't reinvent another day. Do you transfer that to Sunday? Which again, as we all know, there's male football on every single day. So it's very difficult unless you're going to watch two screens at the same time. The idea is fantastic, but going back to grassroots, as Jake said, try and get a kickoff, an early morning kickoff for a girls' game. It's tough. Why? Because there's so many more boys teams playing early, or so many boys teams playing that society feels like that warrants an early kickoff, because we need to get those games in first, and actually then the girls take precedence after. So yes, it will progress, but I think it's got its limitations.
Interesting.
I agree with that.
Just one thing back. Oh, sorry, Estelle, you can talk.
I was just thinking about like participation and getting more people involved. I think you have to let girls and women know that football is an option. That's where it needs to start, because a lot of people still don't see it as an option. Like how Jake was saying, you go into a school, ask boys what they want to do for a career, 90% of them are going to say football player, because that's always been an option. They've probably always been told by their dads or whoever always watched football that, okay, this is a career path you can go down. How many people say to their daughters that a career in football is an optional career path, not even just as a player, as a coach, a manager, physio, you don't really hear football as being an option. It's normally certain individuals taking it upon themselves to go down that route. Like, for example, no one told me that football was an option. I just liked football, so I did it myself in a sense. And then I had the support after that. Originally, no one told me that you can have a career in this area. So I think it needs to be encouraged and spoke about more.
Breaking down barriers.
Just going to challenge that. There's only a small percentage, I think, that start and learn the game with that in mind. I think we all here start the game and then we learn to love it. And then that love will then take you into natural directions, whether it's the coach managed play at a high level. I think especially what we've done at Leyton in terms of going into schools and helping the schools out, run these female and girls only sessions, and how I try and really dumb it down is, even to my own children, I've said, no one buys into football until they've scored that goal. The sound of the ball hitting the net, the elation that you get from your teammates, that feeling that everyone and the eyes are on you and you've actually done it. For me, that's the trigger. You've got to get people, boys and girls, loving the game. So it goes back to the opportunity which I've wrote down. I think they are getting opportunities within schools. There are female clubs out there that do offer female only sessions. The opportunity is increasing, yes, but what you said, Lou, is the environment. That's the difficult one. That's the challenging one. So is there an argument to come up with female only centres? So whether it's, for example, like the 3G pitches that we use and hire, do they get built, designed for females only? Just pure and simply because all the others out there, women don't get looking. Look at the timetable that we get. Oh yeah, you got one Monday night at 9 o'clock. Well, actually, if we play on a Sunday, the likelihood is we don't want to train on a Monday. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then you build up to the game. Well, because the boys have got that in place, where do the girls go? So naturally, the theory will be, okay, let's build these facilities, because yes, there is land out there, but make it girls only. Does that make it right? I'm not too sure. But that would then obviously improve the opportunity even more so.
Yeah, I agree. I do think there should be female priority centres. I do. There was a provider of services in London that has actually bumped off men's and boys teams in favour of women's team at prime time to make sure that they have access. So it's something about, I can see organisations being nervous doing that, but it is literally about how do you proactively ensure that there is equality across the female game, and whether that is increasing the facilities that are available or manoeuvring teams that are on. AFC Leyton is a very good example. Whenever I want pitch time, the local authority has to phone every club that's ever had that slot to see if they want it before they'll offer it to us. So that club hasn't, these clubs haven't contacted them and said, we want that slot. I'm there waiting for the slot, but they are contacting these other organisations to check, because we're so low in the pecking order. And, I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. If they haven't contacted and said they wanted that slot, why are you then sort of encouraging them to take it away from us, if you like, because they've not actually said they wanted it, but they might want it if you're phoning them to say that they're going to lose it, and just give it to us and say, well, you didn't commit to the next year. That's now open to that club. I don't see any problem with that personally, and I do think it is important to ensure that the female game is supported and grown properly. I don't think we should be given the graveyard shift. I think enough damage was done to the female game, and there should be more proactive things happening. And yeah, alongside that, Tom, I completely agree. I think there should be, if new facilities are built, then a certain aspect of that has to be allocated to female football for a certain amount of time, not forever, because obviously if the game gets bigger than the men's game, then obviously there's a disparity again that needs to be equalised. But just to normalise it and make sure there's equal access to those playing pitches, especially the Astros. I mean, the Astros are the issue, aren't they? Because
I just don't think there's enough in general. Like, even if it's you're saying female only, well then the men's team are going to say, well, we need some more, and then there's going to cause arguments. It's not building relationship. It's just I just personally think that'll cause some more arguments. And then you said about being at prime time slots. I'm thinking, well, that's a one way, but I just think in terms of actual facilities, I don't know if they should be specific to male or female, but there just needs to be more.
Do you go one deeper? I'm just thinking of the schools, and obviously we've had to go into schools to try and promote. Why not rejig the school system? So, for example, if you've got a child that's really good at numbers, do you want that child to spend time on doing? We've all been there. Kids that don't enjoy PE spoil the session, whereas kids that are in a maths class, you get some kids that just don't. Then they don't get the maths, and they become disruptive. So, if we're trying to promote and encourage opportunity for everybody, should the schools be created for certain subjects, criteria, etc.? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
The problem is teachers choose PE, have PE as their hour off.
Exactly. And why is that?
I go into schools every day and teach every single class. I know for that 1 hour of the day, the teachers sit in the staff room, have a cup of tea, go mark some books, and they use that as a little bit of a respite. They don't see PE as an option. Didn't
you say something about she was told to sit down when her boys play football?
Yeah, that was my older daughter at primary school. They hired in a coach. He split the whole class, boys and girls. He told all the girls to sit down while the boys played football, and they weren't allowed to play football. They just had to watch. And as you know, my daughter is the captain of the 15s. Yes. And the coach actually said, what are you all doing? You're running around like a bunch of girls, which A, the girls weren't running around, and B, obviously, what is that teaching them? And this isn't 1970, this was recent. It's about 4 years ago now that attitude still exists and is in our primary school.
I think that's what the problem is, though, as well. Like, as much as we want change and we want to have open facilities and help and whatever, and like you want kind of girls to kind of participate in football, it's not going to change unless other people are going to change it. I mean, like, in the way he came in and he was coaching them, and because he didn't want to accept that, then they didn't get the opportunity. And it's always going to be like, it's like anything. If someone decides you're not going to have the opportunity, you never will. So it's kind of like, as much as we can say, yeah, we really want kind of prime time for these kind of facilities, if the person that's owning the facility says, well, no, I want to kind of occupy it for this, it's kind of like a lose-lose situation sometimes.
So
So don't want boys and girls mixing. I've been in loads of schools where they say girls have to do PE separately to the boys, and that then causes a problem as well. But you know, what do you do if the school tell you what to do, what you can and can't do?
What Steph said about, you know, her family and probably many families out there, their interest, mum and dad's interest, does have a knock-on effect on the child, whether they like it or not. And 9 times out of 10, what mum and dad do, kind of the child follows in a similar footsteps. So if that previous conversation just taken me off track, but a parent could potentially, if a school was run via sport-minded people, yes, they still teach maths and English, but I guarantee they wouldn't bring out the little cubes. I guarantee they'll go, right, you're playing a 5-a-side team, and you can incorporate your maths and English within a sporting education. You know, even your science, you know, your body. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of thought and consideration. But my example will be, look at today's mobile phone compared to the mobile phone 30 years ago. Today's car compared to cars 40, 50 years ago. You look at the classroom. You've still got 30 kids sitting, listening to a teacher. Okay, children might be allowed to stand up and move around a little bit. They've gone from a blackboard to a whiteboard to now piece of paper, now to iPads. But we're still taught the same English, maths, science. You know, we're all kind of putting this together. Whether you're good, bad, or indifferent, you're still put in that situation. Now, we want equality and, you know, people who need a voice, etc. Actually, let's have more variety within schools. And again, you can't have 25 more hours in the day. Kids spend a lot of time at school. So I think that's the primary focus within the school.
Sorry, about the fish and the elephant. You can't judge an elephant on its ability to swim and compare that to the fish. And you can't say the fish how climb a tree compared to, say, I don't know, a monkey, because if you're going to assess a fish on the ability to climb a tree, it's always going to be at the bottom of the class. But if you say, right, let's go do swimming, it's going to be the best. You know, but school production line, that's all it is. It's just a production line every single time. It's always the same manufacturing plant.
Football and female football, it's now on the national curriculum from this year. So, you know, how do you think that might impact? You know, do you think the schools will embrace it? How do you think that will benefit the growth of the female game?
It depends whether they get a specific coaching.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It depends on kind of the people kind of teaching them. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you had the male teacher, it would be more likely you're going to be playing football, and if you've got a female, you're more likely going to be playing netball or hockey, which obviously isn't acceptable. That's that thing of what Jake said. You need to have the right coaching, because they're obviously going to go for what they specialize in and what they like, rather than thinking, okay, so what do they all want, kind of thing.
And that stems back from a long time, isn't it? That girls don't do sports. You know, so you've got all of these male PE teachers across the country because girls don't do sports, apparently.
Yeah. Well, for my GCSEs, obviously I went to an all girls school. You like kind of that kind of thing of where you think, oh, there's not really a lot. We had 60 girls like across, kind of actually doing GCSE PE. It's kind of like it takes out that thing where it's like, oh, girls don't really like PE, but it's when you think about it, yeah, it's quite a big amount when you can actually fill kind of 2 full classrooms of people doing PE. So it's like, but then it was like, obviously when I went sixth form, I done a sport and X science course. There was 3 girls and the rest were all boys out of like the whole thing. And like I was doing a football program because we all kind of had one thing, but that just says it was like, it's not a first option kind of thing. And it's
Stefan, you know, the same thing. I went to a mixed school, and when I did A-level sport, we had 10 people in the class. We had 2 girls and 8 boys.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an 8% ratio, and that's at a mixed school where the staff for PE were 50-50 male and female, and every single thing was really good. In my opinion, everything was taught properly. It wasn't just, you know, if it's football, go and just play a match. It was specific, you know, practices and exercises to improve skill and technique. But when it came to actual higher education, it was still a 20 to 80% ratio.
Well, even now, my uni degree is sport and exercise science, and it's basically the same. 80% of people on my course are male. There's not a lot of kind of female kind of people that are doing that degree, because it's sport and exercise science. It's, you'd look at it and think, oh, that's a male thing, because you go into strength and conditioning, you go into kind of like the biomechanics, and all, it's like a lot of things, and it is that thing of, it's like, oh well, and all my lecturers are male as well. I think I don't have any female lecturers; they're all male.
I just want to get your thoughts on if the females were paid triple, 10 times as much, would that be more of an incentive to go and take that as a career? Because I looked up, the average salary in the WSL is 27,000 for the year. Some footballers get paid that, male footballers get paid that a day, especially in the Premier League, a day. If that was even, nearer to 100 grand a year, would that not be more of an incentive to take it up?
Well, yeah, it's a job at the end of the day. So when you say when you grow up, I want to be a footballer,
People see that as the lifestyle.
Yeah, that's your job. Do you think that you look at someone that's earning 300 grand a week kind of thing, and you look at it as, oh, I want that job, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, as much as you may enjoy something, but my first thought wouldn't be, I want to be a female footballer, because of that thing of, I can get a normal job and get more money than that.
I ask the question then, do you think the media does enough to promote female football? Because, I think more media involvement means more sponsorship, more investment, and the wages will follow.
I just think, I watched Tottenham women play the other day. I could just literally go on the laptop, type in the website and watch it for free. If I wanted to watch Tottenham play Fulham tomorrow evening, I believe it is, I have to have a Amazon subscription. I have to have a Sky subscription. I have to have BT subscription, where you don't really have to necessarily have that to watch professional women's football.
No,
I mean,
but there are still advert breaks in there. There's still sponsorship around the edge of the pitches. There's still money generated around. If you switch on the TV, you see somebody wearing the latest Nike boots. Is that female football that you see, or is it male?
I do think I agree with the point of that advertising. Like, social media is such a big thing at the moment. Like, to advertise anything, you want to start up a business, you want to do it, like, social media is a big thing, kind of to push it, and kind of that thing of it's the same thing. Like, if Tottenham playing Fulham tomorrow, it's like you get a Sky Sports notification because the Villa game got postponed and they replaced it with Fulham, and then you get another notification because, oh, but watch it on Sky Sports and watch this. If it's like a female game, you don't get any notifications. Unless you're physically typing in and searching. Okay, so like when is this on? What am I going to watch it on?
Steph, one
just quickly,
you right? Or Estelle, if I was to say to you, name a Tottenham player, who would you say?
What, male?
Ah, see, no, just first player that comes.
Yeah, my first player would come to mind would be like someone like Dele Alli or someone, or Son, right. Because that's the person that gets advertised most.
Yeah, for me that's the problem. Like, obviously Alex Morgan was at Spurs. I would have said her name but she's left now, and I honestly, apart from, I can't even on the top of my head, maybe
that is the media, isn't it? Because
exactly.
They're household names. The males are household names. The women aren't.
It's not even the fact that knowing them because you watch them play. It's everything around them. Like you said, Lou, like about the kind of the articles. You can get 100 articles on one player. It's, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you don't even need to physically watch them. You go on the news and it'd be like, this player done, or you look at Grealish and he done this, and do you know what I mean? Like, it's a constant reminder of that person, and kind of, and then you go, oh, well, they're male footballers.
Estelle.
So I was just going back to the point about money, and like how Jake said, if the money was to increase, would it increase the amount of female participation? And it would. But the issue is, look at it as paying players and coaches. Do you want players playing for you because they're getting paid a certain amount of money, or do you want them playing for you because they want to play for you, they enjoy playing football and they like the club? And the same thing for us as coaches. Does Louise want us working for her because of the invoice we get at the end of the month? Or does she want us working for her because of the coaching?
So I'll have to disagree with you, Estelle.
What about the money?
Yeah, I look at Mesut Ozil. He's sitting there not even wanting to play for us and just not doing anything. He's on 350 grand a week, and he can just sit there for the next 6 months and not have to kick a ball. He doesn't care about Arsenal. He just wants the money. Like,
That's the issue.
Yeah, that is the big issue.
You play more and they play better. It's always that always happens. I don't just be morally correct on this issue of money.
I just think money kind of football is a kind of a touchy subject in a way, because it's like you've got players that only are playing for clubs for money, and you've got players that are playing for the club because they actually kind of love the club. And it's a difficult kind of subject to say, is like, if you increase the money, like Estelle said, like, are you going to get a bunch of people playing women's football because they're thinking, well, I can just get loads of money from it, or they're going to get it as, oh, like they actually want to play in football? Do you know what I mean?
Name one player that stays at the same club the whole of their career these days.
Messi at the moment.
Fine, but he's in his 30s now. He's already, his career's pretty much finished.
Yeah, but
people bounce. You know, Hazard, a player earning lots and lots of money. Real Madrid offer him double that, and he goes to Real Madrid. I mean,
yeah, but then you look at, like you said with Ozil, but then you look at someone like Gareth Bale, like he would be happy to sit on the bench and play golf. Do you know what I mean? For the amount of money, and that kind of the only reason why.
£1,000 a week.
Well, yeah, but you got to think of it as, if he obviously went to loan to Tottenham
to get anywhere near to that.
He went to loan to Tottenham, but one of the only reasons why is because they kind of made that deal with Madrid to kind of how they're going to pay the wages. He's not going to go to someone that's not going to pay that amount of wages. I mean, he's going to stay where the money is, in a way.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I don't think men's football is going to change and players are going to start playing because of the club. It is run by money, but women's football is in a much different place, money-wise and business-wise. Yeah. So why can't we steer women's football in the direction where we are playing because we want to play and we want to be a part of women's football, instead of following the same path as the men's has done and make it all about money? Because it does depend how you're motivated, whether you're intrinsically or extrinsically motivated. But I do agree, within all of us, there is an element of working for money, of course. But it just seems like money's dominating a lot of male players at the moment, and you don't see the same level of passion that you may have done back when they weren't getting paid as much.
That's what I feel like. That's why I feel like with grassroots football, like, is where we say about, is there ever going to kind of be that change with kind of higher up on grassroots? Like, there's more drive with grassroots football, because everyone knows that if you're working for a grassroots club, you're not going to get obviously as paid as much and whatever, and you're not going to get the same amount of resources you would be if you were working for an academy. But that comes down to because you love your job. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like I love coaching because I love it, not because, oh, I'm going to get, like you said, because of the invoice that I get at the end of the month. But it's that thing of it. I think that's why there's going to be like that big change, because it's like it kind of differs from kind of loving your job and wanting to do it to kind of, well, that pay. And I do agree with the point of, we want kind of women's football to steer in direction because they enjoy it and they love it and they want to coach and they want to play, rather than, well, I'm going to go get a physio job with Tottenham because it's going to pay more money, rather than going to someone in WSL kind of thing.
So I have to kind of disagree with, though. If you look at equality, you make it. I know it's coming from a male point of view, but I'm taking it out. I'm just thinking that money. You know, if a male footballer plays 90 minutes, plays on the same size pitch, you know, has the same amount of touches of the ball, can get paid 200 grand a week, and a female footballer that does exactly the same amount of touches, same position, same pitch, same goal, same everything, but it's on £1,200 a week.
I just think it's
because
kind
they
of
ain't got the money to pay the women that much. Sorry, Steph.
It's all right.
They don't have their own stadiums. They have to share with lower league male football team stadiums. Like Tottenham play at the Hive. Why can't Tottenham women have their own stadium? Doesn't have to be a 60,000 seat, 1 billion, stadium. But that's something they should look to get towards, and there should be. I don't know.
I'm not saying they shouldn't have
ticket prices. Oh, sorry, no, Steph, you go this time.
It's not about like that incentive. Obviously, you want them to get bigger and want to get more money, but it's that thing of, you got to think of it as, if you're trying to get more people to notice women football, you don't want to notice them just because of their money. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to sit there and be like, well, this is the only reason why we want women's football to be about, because they have lots of money.
It's to build infrastructure. The money
a few things. Obviously, I've been listening to everyone's comments, and a few things that I've picked up on. So you asked about the media and what they can be doing. Now, I put profit and non-profit. So you get media companies that make profit, and then there's media companies that look to provide information, whether it's for money or not money. Make sense?
Kind of, yeah. Okay.
Now, the profit, obviously, in my opinion, you're going to make profit. There's a few things that sell, but the one that springs to mind is entertainment. Entertainment stories, interesting stories, they're going to sell. So then that brings me back to, well, football. What is football first and foremost? And it's a game, it's a sport. It should be entertaining. Do we agree?
Yeah.
Now, my open question will be, what is more entertaining at the minute? Male football or women's football, and why? Because for me, male football is more entertaining because it's quicker. Then we get to a contentious argument. Well, actually, will the women's game ever get to that point? So then then the entertainment factor, is there a limit to the women's game being, yes, it can reach certain heights, but is it going to go higher than the male game? Because we're delving into science.
Well, again, it was higher than the men's game, wasn't it?
So if you want to put one more. If you want to put women, so in terms of, I'm thinking about, you pick up a magazine, a newspaper, and you turn over to the fact page, it is male dominated. So if you want to put females on there for sport and for football, in my opinion, you're not gonna eradicate the male stories and put women. I don't think it will get read. I think even if you put the male stories inside, I think people will flick it and go to the male stories, because that's where the entertainment.
Well, this is how you normalise behaviours. It has to be there, and it has to be there consistently there.
Yeah.
If you're saying you're going to rock up into a school and you're going to go and pick out the boys and you're going to pick out the girls, and the boys are automatically going to be better at football because the girls haven't been exposed to it. Does that mean they're not important? Does that mean there doesn't need to be an equal emphasis on it? No. And that's my attitude within the media, within advertising as well, that I do think that there should be an equal share of that space. 26 million women and girls worldwide play football.
Then you're asking these big companies to take a financial hit.
Not necessarily. No.
It comes down to money.
No, well, it does come down to money, but it's not about that at all. I mean, we're talking about news.
Well, it is, because if you designed an app and your app is getting paid because people view it or click on it, you'll have a portion of people that click on it because of the information that you're offering that's about women's football. But I guarantee you there'll be a lot of people that go swipe or whatever. No, I want to read something on Tottenham or Arsenal or Mal Premier League, whatever. Maybe
some people will skip it. Maybe some people will read it. Maybe
again, it goes back to society. But my argument was the media and the money that's involved in that.
Yes, and again, it's about leveling that playing field, isn't it, and giving that market share. So even if the guys got 2/3 and the woman got 1/3, this is kind of creating some sort of balance and awareness and knowledge that the female game exists. It is growing. It is growing in popularity. There is money starting to come into it. I think it's an uncapped area for marketing. I genuinely do, as a marketing person. I do believe a lot of brands are missing out.
But no, throw something in there about that.
Market to females. Pardon?
No, just throw something in there though. Yeah. We're acting as if the male game isn't also growing. Just in terms of World Cup viewing figures, that's the only information I've got on me. But in the 2018 Russia World Cup, that was the highest ever for a men's football competition, up from up over 1 billion from the last competition. So if that's going to be raising the same amount as the women's team have got to, is that gap? Can it be? Can it ever? If it's like if your ceiling keeps getting higher and you're there, the gap's just going to stay the same.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is what I'm saying. Was the damage done? Was the damage already done? Will the women's game ever catch up? This is the
it won't if the male's game keeps growing at the same speed it's growing. I look at what they're trying to do. They're trying to do like a European Super League with all the best teams in every league. Don't have a Champions League or anything like that. They just go and play in this league competition where instead of Arsenal travelling up to Stoke to play in the FA Cup. They'll be travelling to Italy to play Juventus in a league game. Like that's the standard where they're trying to get to at the moment.
The only way you'll make it is if you put a cap on money, and that's money on sponsorship, player and staff wages, the amount of money somebody can invest in the club. You put a cap on that, then you've got a level playing field. As long as they allow these billionaires, listen, it's not the FA that are paying players' wages, it's these rich organisations, and I'm coming from a lowly league Leyton Orient fan. We're never going to get to the Premier League in the next few years, shall we say?
Ever.
That's from the Tottenham fan.
Right. Guys, I'm going to call it a day here. So good final thoughts there from Tom that
what's the next topic?
The next topic, I'm not sure actually. We'll I'll leave that up to you guys to decide on the next one. But I think we'll leave it there and just say that I think perhaps you're right.
But maybe money in female sport and male sport would be the next one.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I feel like start off where we left off in this one.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Money in sport, I think that's a good topic.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everyone. Okay, take care.
Thank you. See you later.